So, after I left here last week, I was in a great mood. I really enjoyed, as much as the topic we're covering right now is horrendous, I thought we did a really good episode. And I don't work Fridays at my day job. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to go home, going to have a snack, and I'm going to stay up late. Because I'm an adult and I can do what I want.
Yeah.
And I was so inspired and feeling good about the podcast that I was like, you know what? I'm going to start editing the podcast right now.
I love
It's fresh in my mind. I'm going to jump into it. And so Cody went to go to bed because he still had to work the next day. And I was like, I'm going to stay up. And I was having a great time, started editing the podcast. So that was awesome. And then about 11:30 p.m., all of a sudden, and it hit fast, my tummy did not feel good.
Oh no.
And I am prone to, I'm not an IBS girly by any means, but I have a genetic predisposition, shall we say, to tummy upsets of various kinds, ulcers and acid reflux and all that fun stuff. And so I was like, oh, I need to get ahead of this right now. I got to take meds and I got to get a hot water bottle and okay, I've pushed myself too far. I get it. It's fine.
You stayed up too late.
I stayed up too late. So I'm making my hot water bottle, boiling water, which you're not really supposed to use boiling water in a hot water bottle, but I do because I like to live dangerously. And I paid for it dearly. I burnt all my hand.
Oh my God.
It's looking a lot better, but you can see the outline. I was wearing a sweatshirt, as you can see, and because my tendon was flexed, it all pulled in there and burned, and then all down there. So around my wrist, for those of you who are listening, and sort of up towards my index finger and my thumb, I poured 100-degree boiling water straight onto it.
I did not expect that. That looks brutal.
It's actually, right now it's fine. I will say it's all sort of, this is very graphic for those listening if you want to skip ahead a few seconds, but also we're talking about Richard Chase, so maybe figure out your priorities, I don't know. But it's all peeled away, obviously, and you can see how tan the rest of my hand is versus the pink fresh skin underneath.
New skin.
It's so soft though, because it's never seen the light of day before. But yeah, guys, and then all weekend long, and it was a long weekend for us here. I mean, every weekend is a long weekend for me, thankfully, but we also had Monday off here. In Canada for Victoria Day. I then had tummy upsets all weekend. I didn't sleep all night because by the time my tummy meds kicked in and I felt better, my hand was on fire.
Yeah.
And I went to bed at 7 a.m. after staying up all night.
I'm shocked you didn't go to the doctor for that. That looks gnarly.
I promise you, it looks way, way worse. It's just literally that one thin top layer of skin, but it looks very red and angry right now, but it's not sore or anything. And I've just been slapping on tons and tons of moisturizer.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was my Thursday. I tried so hard. I was like, yeah.
I'm proud of you.
I was so empowered. And then it all went horribly wrong.
Sometimes the universe just needs to humble you.
It does. And you know what? I took that as a strong sign. I was a little pissed off, I will admit, because I had plans that weekend. I had things I wanted to do that I was very much looking forward to. And I guess that was the universe being like, nah, bitch, you're going to chill out with a tummy ache.
So tragic.
I know. But I mean, it's not as tragic as compared to what we're about to talk about. So
no,
there is that bright
honestly,
side.
Woof.
It's brutal, guys. I mean, yeah, let's get into it, I guess.
Let's do it.
After my sob story there. Alrighty, everyone. Hello, I am Charlotte.
And I'm Dina. Welcome to the Grim Curriculum.
So last week, as you all know, we began our series on the vampire of Sacramento, Richard Chase.
We went over the countless animal deaths that he was responsible for, as well as his ever-deteriorating mental state.
Today, we will be talking about the horrific murders that he committed over a shockingly short period of time.
Just like last week, we want to warn you all that the crimes we're going to be covering today are going to be extremely difficult to listen to, and we don't say that lightly.
Not at all. So with that, consider yourself forewarned.
We last left off in the year 1977 when Richard was apprehended by police in the Pyramid Lake Reservation. He was found completely naked and covered in blood. Upon investigating the car, they found a white bucket containing a liver. It would later be revealed that it belonged to a cow.
While I'm very happy it didn't end up belonging to a human being, It makes me still very, very sad for that cow because, as we confirmed last week, he was responsible for the death of the cow that it belonged to, and that just turned my stomach.
Whose cow is it? I would want to
Exactly.
know. If that was my cow, I would want vengeance.
100%. He faced very few consequences for this, but that same year, Richard would begin a crime spree of horrific proportions. He was growing more bold, and along with that, he was very angry that his parents refused to let him come home for Christmas that year after he had killed another one of their cats.
This upset him because he had cut his hair, shaved, and done everything that he could think of to show them that he was doing better. But this time, they didn't buy it.
Wow. I'm a little shocked after the last slew of people that we've covered that his parents sort of seem to learn.
You know, it's funny that you say that because I thought that too. And I'm like, hey,
Mm.
you know what? Maybe Mama Chase has figured it out.
Mhm.
And there's one point at the end of our story that when you hear it,
Oh,
you're going to
no.
be pissed.
Oh, good. All right, well, brace everyone, I am. Richard also began walking into his neighbors' yards and staring at them through windows until he got bored or was chased away.
On December 27th, 1977, Richard would attempt his first murder. Before this, he had purchased a .22 caliber pistol. He was able to gain access to this gun by lying about his mental state to the store owner. Neighbors would later claim that they would often hear shooting coming from inside his apartment.
Oh my god.
Richard would later say that he was shooting at voices that he was hearing.
Oh, good heavens. That's like, let's not give the really mentally unwell, paranoid schizophrenic a firearm. How
Yeah.
about? Right? Like, I think that's a fair assumption to make.
Yeah. I mean, that is very fair. And later when they would investigate his apartment when he was arrested,
Mhm.
there were bullets everywhere. There were holes in
Oh my
everything.
god.
He was shooting at the walls. He's shooting at the TV.
I mean, luckily a .22 caliber is a very small bullet,
Mhm.
but a .22 caliber just fired off in a straight line can go up to like kilometers away. I am shocked he didn't accidentally kill someone before he intended to really kill someone.
Well, unfortunately, he was shooting a lot of puppies.
Oh god, it just gets
Mhm.
worse. He arrived at the home of Dorothy Polinsky at around 6:30 p.m. She was in her kitchen doing the dishes when she heard a sharp pop. After that, she felt heat passing her head. By some miracle, she was wearing her hair in a bun, and rather than hitting her, the bullet went through it and into the kitchen cabinet.
2 days later, Richard was driving his Ford Ranchero around the neighborhood when he saw a 51-year-old father of two, Ambrose Griffin, unloading groceries in his driveway. His wife heard two loud pops and saw her husband fall to the ground. It all happened so fast that she originally believed he was having a heart attack.
Oh my god. After he killed Ambrose, Richard went home, sat down, and watched TV like nothing had happened. Psychopathic.
Mhm. We said this last week, but he truly is just a gremlin of a human being.
Just chaos incarnate
Yeah.
in the worst way
Mhm.
possible.
The shooting left police completely baffled. The murder was seemingly random, and they had a hard time coming up with a suspect.
A 12-year-old boy had called them and reported that a day before the shooting, a man had fired a gun at him from his car. He couldn't remember any other details. In a desperate attempt to gain insight on what had happened, they did what many investigators have done in the past, and they hired a hypnotist.
Of course.
I mean, it happens, and there is such a thing as like repressed memories
Yeah.
and stuff, but how accurate they really are. I mean, as much as your brain and your eyes witness everything day to day, your brain also makes up dreams and
Of
shit.
course it does.
So who's to say what you're saying under hypnosis is really factual?
Yeah.
It could just be your perception.
Under hypnosis, he was able to recall a license plate number as well as seeing a Trans Am. The make of the car was incorrect, and the plate led them nowhere. The truth would not be revealed until Richard Chase was arrested.
To wait that long and never know.
Yeah.
That's crazy. After this murder, Richard's need for blood grew. One of his neighbors would report him bringing in animals on numerous occasions, only to never see them again.
2 weeks after the murder of Ambrose Griffin, Richard attempted to enter the home of a local woman, but left because her door was locked. He would later tell investigators that he saw locked doors as a sign that he was not welcome in the home.
And we've mentioned this many times. We're
Lock your
finally
doors.
talking about it, but lock your doors because Richard Chase, like, oh my God, I can't even imagine. I wonder if that person ever really found out that Richard Chase had wiggled
Yeah.
their doorknob.
It's funny because, well, not funny. I mean, haha.
Funny, strange, not funny, haha.
It's that belief in vampires, right? They
Yes.
can't enter a home without permission.
Exactly.
We recently saw Sinners in theaters.
Oh, I've
which,
heard such good
holy crap, you
things.
guys, you have to watch Sinners. It is phenomenal. But there's one point where you don't know that they're vampires yet. Spoiler alert, they are vampires. It's in the trailer. I just
knew
missed
that,
it.
yeah.
But they try to get into the barn and they won't go in. And when that happened, I was like, they're vampires.
I see you.
Yeah.
On January 23rd, 1978, he decided it was time to try killing again. He found his way into the home of Jean Layton. He attempted to gain entrance through her patio door, but it was locked, and so were the windows.
He made his way to her back door where she was standing. She would later describe the look on his face as emotionless.
I would poop my pants.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely not. There's many times even, and this is because of the topics that we cover and my active imagination, many times when I'm sitting on the deck, having my last smoke of the night, it's dark, I look at the moon and the stars and it's me and Buffy. Many times when I'm looking out towards the beyond my fence, I'm like, I wonder if something's looking back.
Literally last night, we were laying in bed and our bedroom is very close to the stairs.
Okay.
And we had the door open.
Yeah.
And Steve says to me, can you imagine if you just saw someone standing there? And I'm like, get up and lock the door.
Steve.
And he got up and locked the door for me. I was like, why would you say that?
You can't. There's been, not to get too far off track, but many times, you know how when you're laying in bed at night and if you stare too long without blinking, everything goes dark?
Yeah.
My childhood bed, my teenage bed, I would look out the door and the smoke detector was right there and the red light I could see. And I didn't know this thing about your eyes in the dark. And I'm laying there and I'm just drifting off to sleep. And all of a sudden, the red light disappeared. And then I was like, what? And then it came back when I shook and I was like, what the hell? And then I waited again. I'm like, okay, maybe the battery's dying. And then it did it again. Whoosh. And I was like, no, absolutely not. Turned the light on.
We're laughing because we have to for this episode.
Absolutely.
We need it.
I'm honestly probably procrastinating going any further at this point. I'm sorry, guys. We'll try and stick to it.
He walked away through her backyard. From there, he walked into the unlocked house of Robert and Barbara Edwards, who were out grocery shopping.
Oh my God.
When they arrived back home, they saw Richard Chase in their hallway.
Absolutely not. Horrific. 0 out of 10. Do not recommend. They managed to chase him out of the house, though, and they found a bag full of valuables and believed that he had been there in an attempt to rob them. Upon further inspection of their home, they saw that he had gotten into their baby's bedroom and urinated in a drawer full of clothing. He had also defecated and left it in the crib. What a absolute gremlin. Just like you say. Yeah. Absolute demon behavior.
Richard then went to the store to buy himself something to drink because after all those adventures,
of course,
he's thirsty. There, he ran into someone he recognized, a former classmate named Nancy Holden. He approached her and began talking about a motorcycle accident in which a friend of hers had died. Richard asked her if she had been on the bike when it happened. She was shocked by this, especially because she didn't recognize Richard due to his unkempt appearance.
So this is just a strange thing happening. And for all intents and purposes, this is a stranger to her, asking her about someone who died in an accident and then asking if she was there.
I think it was her ex-boyfriend or her boyfriend at the time, too, which made it a lot worse.
God.
And this, again, gremlin of a man just walks up to her and he's like, were you there when he died? And the thing we didn't talk about last time about Richard Chase,
yes,
very high-pitched voice.
Really?
Yep.
I did not know that. Ew, don't like that at all. He had the gall to ask her for a ride after that, but she declined and got into her vehicle to drive off. She was able to get away just as he began to try and open her door.
Which was lucky considering he had his gun with him.
Oh, no. After this, he made his way to another house, he saw a van parked in the driveway that he recognized from the store.
He walked to the door and ejected a bullet from his gun into the mailbox. Richard then opened the door just as Teresa Wallen was coming out with a bag of garbage. She dropped the bag as Richard began firing his gun. The first bullet nicked her neck, the second hit her in the skull. He then fired a third bullet into her head at close range.
This is where our story takes the most horrific turn.
Richard dragged her body into the bedroom. He then grabbed a knife and an empty cup from the garbage. Then he removed her sweater and cut off her nipple. He stabbed her so hard that he sliced part of her stomach. He removed multiple organs from her body and then stabbed them.
Richard collected her blood into the cup, which he then drank. He used the remaining blood by smearing it all over his body, and when he was done, he gathered dog feces from her yard and shoved it down her throat.
Soon after, her husband came home and saw her body. He called the police as well as her parents.
To make it even worse, if that's possible, some investigators believe that she was still somewhat alive when he began to mutilate her body. An autopsy revealed that she was 3 months pregnant at the time of her death. God, what a piece of shit this dude is.
I am very, very, very glad this man is dead.
Me too. I was thinking that actually before I came here.
Yeah.
I was pretty sure he was dead.
Mhm.
And Cody was like, "Who are you covering this week?" And I was like, "We're still on Richard Chase." And I was like, "Thank fuck he's dead." And then I was like, "Wait a sec, is he?" And I looked it up, and I was like, "Yeah, he is." And I'm very glad.
Mhm. After the murder, Richard went home and watched TV. His mother would later report that he called her and talked about spaceships and little green men.
Once again, police had no leads when it came to the death of Teresa Wallen. At first, they believed that it could have been an ex of hers or her husband's who acted in a fit of jealousy, but this was quickly disproven. I mean, if a woman gets murdered, you jump to the spouse.
Yeah.
But
Well, what it was this was kind of at the height of satanic panic. And they found out that the husband, one of his ex-girlfriends, was allegedly into satanic cults.
Oh, well, I can see how they connected those
Yeah,
dots
but
at the
immediately they were
time.
like, no, it wasn't her.
This is, yeah.
On January 25th, a couple found one of their puppies dead on the porch. It had been shot and its stomach had been ripped out of its body. They phoned the police and asked if they had seen anyone suspicious in the neighborhood. They informed them that a few days prior, a filthy man wearing a bright orange jacket had purchased 2 dogs from them and that his behavior seemed erratic.
Oh, man. And I'm sure this is only adding to the, like you said, the satanic panic of the time as
Oh,
well.
yeah.
You're starting to see cats, dogs, and God knows what else mutilated and out there. People, it seems so silly to look back on satanic panic now
Mhm.
and be like, yeah, Metallica was the devil and blah, blah, blah. But shit like this is popping up in your neighborhood. I can certainly see why it got stirred into it.
Yeah, I mean, it's scary.
Absolutely. They did do an autopsy on the dog and found pieces of a .22 caliber bullet, but this still didn't give them much to go off of, and Richard was not considered a suspect.
The next series of murders are by far some of the most violent we have ever talked about. Richard Chase would later say that he does not fully remember the series of events, so the order in which they happened in is the best that the police could come up with.
On January 27th, Richard Chase arrived at the home of 38-year-old Evelyn Miroth. She was a single mother of 2 sons, Vernon, who was 13, and Jason, who was 6. That day, she was at home with Jason and her 20-month-old nephew, David.
Jason had plans to play with a neighbor of his in the snow. At 9:05 a.m., Danny Meredith, a friend of Evelyn's, came over to visit. He had been introduced to her by his sister and at the time was suffering from a brain tumor. Evelyn asked him to go out and rent snowshoes for the kids, and he happily obliged.
After Danny left the house, Richard Chase entered the home through an unlocked back door. He went upstairs where Evelyn was taking a bath. He killed her instantly by shooting her in the head and dragged her body over to the bed.
It is very likely that Jason, upon hearing the shot, went into her room to see what happened. Richard shot him twice in the head and left the body next to the bed. He then went into the kitchen to get the knife. As he did this, he heard the front door open. It was Danny. The two came face to face, and Richard shot him as well.
After doing this, Richard heard a crying baby. He saw the child in his crib and shot him in the head as well. He then took the knife and went back to Evelyn. He cut her open and pulled out her intestines and stabbed her body specifically to hit her organs.
Richard then took out her liver and ate a piece of it. He gathered as much blood as possible from the body. He then rolled her over and stabbed her anus 6 times. Semen would be found in her anus, suggesting that Richard had assaulted the wound despite his impotence.
He then sliced her neck and cut out one of her eyes. Richard then went back to the baby's room and split his head open. He then poured the brain into the bathtub nearby.
As he was doing this, Richard heard a knock at the door. One of the neighborhood kids came over to see when Jason was going to come out and play. He ignored her, and when she left, he took Danny's keys and escaped the home with the body of the baby.
Richard would later say that he blacked out while fleeing the scene and did not remember coming home. He would also say that he cannibalized David.
30 minutes later, another neighbor who was worried when Jason never showed up opened the door and saw the body of Danny Meredith.
When police arrived, they saw the grisly scene before them. Detective Ray Biondi described it as a house of carnage. He would later say that he found it extremely difficult to see the body of Jason, as he himself had a 6-year-old son at the time.
He also saw that David was missing. They found bloody hand and shoe prints at the scene, and due to the severity of the murder, immediately linked it to the death of Teresa Wallen.
I'm glad that they made that connection immediately, but I mean, how could they not?
You know what's interesting about the murders is Richard Chase left behind a mess.
Oh,
There's blood everywhere.
yeah.
He wore gloves.
Whoa. That's pretty mind-boggling, considered this man is supposed to be out of his mind.
Exactly.
Well, that's now all the gears are going in my brain. I didn't know that.
Yeah, he wore gloves to both of those murders. He left the blood everywhere. He left, he pooped in a crib at another house.
Well, yeah.
So he doesn't care, but he has the wherewithal
to put on gloves.
Exactly.
Well, and the other thing about that, not only from, say, a fingerprint point of view, but often in very violent and chaotic stabbings, the perpetrator often injures themselves in the process. And as well, you can slip on the knife and cut your own hands, all these kinds of things. So he's protecting himself from
They're
even
just rubber
that.
gloves.
Oh.
Which makes it even weirder.
Oh, this just has the mind in a spiral.
And you can't, no matter how much you think about this and no matter how much you want to, you cannot make sense of anything that he does.
Like I said, just a walking, talking, intrusive thought that went with it. And it's foul and disgusting and horrendous. Special Agent Russ Verpagel called upon FBI profiler Robert Ressler, who we've actually talked about during our Ed Kemper series. Together, they created a profile of a killer and determined that he was likely a white male in his 20s who was suffering from severe mental illness.
Neighbors reported that a few days prior to the murders, a filthy man in an orange jacket had come to their homes asking for magazines. Nancy Holden also told them about her encounter with a similar-looking man who had introduced himself as Rick. She later realized it was Richard Chase.
After she came forward, police did a background check and found his address. At first, he refused to open his door, so they spoke to him and pretended to leave. Shortly after, they saw him exiting the apartment and apprehended him. Detective Wayne Irie considered shooting Richard, but decided against it. Later, he would say,
"That's when I found out I'm not like him. Even though it would have been a good shooting, it would have been a justified shooting, I couldn't kill him. And I would have been justified in doing it because the average person, cops included, are not like these people. He is a cold-blooded killer. We aren't."
oh man, this is a very touchy subject, obviously, because police violence is a horrific thing that exists, unfortunately. But in that moment, as much as I agree, he would have been justified in taking this motherfucker off the face of the planet. But I'm glad that he was strong enough to resist that temptation. And he's absolutely right. Your average person will never even know a fraction of the monstrosity that Richard Chase
Yeah.
is. And I'm glad he was able to keep himself separate from that.
Yeah, which I mean, that says a lot about the kind of cop that he is. We talk a
Yes.
lot about bad cops,
Yeah.
but there are none in this story.
No, and it's a refreshing breath
It is.
of air. It really is. When they searched Richard's home, they found that his walls, ceiling, and fridge were covered in blood, along with all of his utensils. In his kitchen, they discovered a blood stained blender.
They also found several dog collars, as well as rotting pieces of organs that belonged to both animals and his victims.
Investigators also noted that he had ripped out newspaper ads for dogs that were for sale and had circled them. In his kitchen, they found a calendar where the dates of January 23rd and January 27th had the word today written on it. He had written that word on 44 more days during that year, leading them to believe he had been planning to kill again.
Richard was uncooperative with the police and claimed that he had only killed dogs. He also said that he was being, and I quote, framed by the Italians. A few days after his arrest, Richard was interviewed by psychiatrists. They asked him what had been on his mind, and he was reluctant to share his thoughts.
They then rephrased the question and asked him to describe what he was seeing in his mind as though he was watching it on TV. He said normal things, UFOs, and a exploding 747 jetliner. He also lied about being Jewish and stated that again Italians had beaten him up because of his religion.
He said that he was born with the Star of David on his forehead.
Okay, yeah.
And then when they were getting him a lawyer, he was like, I want a Jewish lawyer because I am Jewish. And they were like, no.
What the
Hmm.
hell? Oh my lord. In 1979, Richard Chase stood trial for 6 counts of first degree murder. He entered the plea of not guilty by reason of insanity. In order for him to avoid the death penalty, his defense attempted to have him found guilty of second degree murder, in which the punishment would be a life sentence.
Richard told the jury that he was a good person and that he had a weak heart and mind. He also spoke of his fear that his victims would come back from the dead.
If haunting is such a thing, and we have a choice over things like that, or whether or not we are just haunted by our own memories of shitty things we've done,
Hmm.
I hope every single one of those people and every single one of those fucking animals haunted him every
Hmm.
single second of every single day until the day that man went straight to hell.
Yeah.
And I'll leave that at that.
And I agree with you.
Ugh.
Teresa Wallen's husband gave an impact statement during his trial. Richard's mother approached him afterwards and said that their dog had done a bad job because he had not protected his family. He responded to this by telling her that she should have protected people from her son.
Correct. Their dog? My God, get a psychiatrist on this woman
Yeah,
immediately. But I mean, at least they're seeing her and then they're seeing Richard and then probably being like, well, apple tree.
yeah, that shocked me.
Yeah, it was the dog's fault. Good heavens.
Ma'am, your son ate a baby.
Nice try, though, I
Yeah,
guess. Frick. On May 8th, Richard Chase was found guilty of all counts of first degree murder. He was sentenced to death by gas chamber. The lead prosecutor convinced the jury that Richard was mentally disturbed, but he definitely knew what he was doing was wrong.
Richard was sent to San Quentin prison where other inmates feared him. They also attempted to convince him to end his own life. During his time at San Quentin, he continued to behave erratically and requested to be sent to a different prison so he could be away from the UFOs.
Mental. Richard also wrote several letters that spoke about why he had committed these murders. He blamed UFOs, the CIA, the mafia, and airline disasters. He wrote that he had been tracked by UFO intelligence for 6 months prior to the murders and that he was the result of alien cloning.
Robert Ressler returned to the prison to interview Richard so he could validate the original profile that he had done of him. Richard told him that Nazis were out to get him and that he was going to appeal his death sentence because he was being poisoned by soap from the Nazis, which had turned his blood into powder. A sentence I never thought I would say.
That is just a roller coaster. And I am not one to condone gang violence by any means, but if the Nazis in that particular prison wanted to take out the trash, I wouldn't be mad at him for it, to
No.
be
Well,
honest.
you know what he said about the soap? He said, "You know how sometimes you pick up a bar of soap and it's like gooey on the bottom? That means that you're being poisoned by Nazis."
Roger that, Richard. You doorknob.
Right?
Oh my god. Ay, ay,
Mhm.
ay. He also asked Wrestler to do testing on all of his food because he thought that he was being poisoned, a la Mama Chase.
Mhm.
He wasn't.
At 11:05 a.m. on December 26, 1980, Richard Chase was found dead in his prison cell. He had hoarded 36 doses of his medication that was prescribed to help with depression and hallucinations.
The reason for his suicide is unknown. Some believe that it was an accidental overdose and that he had taken a large quantity of drugs because he thought that it would silence the voices in his head.
And that is the end of the story of Richard Chase, the vampire of Sacramento.
Now, some of y'all will disagree with the next things I'm about to say, but bear with me because I'm about to go off on this man. I am actually upset that he died of a drug overdose. I think he should have died in the worst possible way. Like, I think they should have blended that man,
Yeah.
actually, to be honest with you.
Mhm.
Like, if there's a circle of hell where being blended is a thing, I hope that's where Richard Chase is.
We, every now and again, get comments on YouTube and TikTok
Mm,
where people try to justify the crimes that people have done. And I usually remove them.
yes.
Most recently, this was the other day, we got one about Danny Rolling,
Oh, yeah.
about how he was framed and so on and so forth. And I
Mm-mm.
don't even entertain that. So I don't
No.
even respond. I just delete them. But I I have a hard time seeing any kind of potential light or innocence or any other path that this man could have gone down. He was evil from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
He was enabled by his mother.
Yep. Who was also mentally sick
Yeah.
herself.
And the world is a much better place without him in it. I'm glad that they caught him as quickly as they did because I do think he would have done a lot
Oh,
more.
I
He had
mean,
44 more planned.
exactly. And as much as he is a disorganized killer, and you think, oh, well, someone who marks it today on their calendar is not
Mhm.
disorganized. Disorganized in the sense that, like, he marked it today, but then he went out and just started popping off in every
Yeah.
direction. Like, he didn't know who he was going to kill that day. It was whoever just happened to be in the wrong place at the
Yeah.
wrong time. And I agree, there was no place in society for this individual. I don't think he could have been
No.
rehabilitated. And to be honest with you, as much as, frickin' Ed Gein spent the rest of his time in a mental institution being happy as Larry and never being really a problem ever
Mhm.
again, I think this man absolutely would have been. And the reason I know that is because the first time he was in a mental institution, he was cracking open birds and drinking their
Yeah.
blood. So, what makes you think that he wouldn't have cracked open another human being should he get his hands on them?
I couldn't agree more. This was a danger of a human being, and there is no redemption arc for somebody like this.
Absolutely not. And yeah, I don't want to see the comments that are like, well, he was mentally ill. Yeah, he was. And that doesn't excuse anything.
Mhm.
End of rant. Thank you for being here with us. Thank you for sticking it out through that. If you're feeling a little upset tummy, don't blame you. This is one that
Mhm.
gets me kind of gurgling in the gut area for sure. And yeah, thank God. Rest in pain and sorrow, Richard Chase.
Yep. With all that.
Yeah.
If you want to support the show, please check out our Patreon. It
Yeah.
is patreon.com/thegrimcurriculum. There is a free tier where you can get early episode reveals. We also have a Discord, and we do shout outs for our top tier members, the Grim VIPs.
You betcha. So, a humongous and grand thank you to the lovely and wonderful Mayhem Mudkip, Lisa, Nova, Kevinus Musicus, Brian, Bob, Paranoid Pop Rocks, Steven Centauri, Judy, and Atlantean Jedi.
Thank you, thank you.
You're the Titty City.
And thank you all so much for listening. This has been
The Grim Curriculum. Oh, wonderful.
I learned this the other day. As a child, much of my life was spent playing Neopets.
Same.
good.
I love Neopets.
Neopets was bought by Scientologists.
Oh, Dina.
I know.
No. You know what's funny? I logged in very recently, and I unfortunately I really did try to recover my 13-year-old account, but to no avail. The site still exists. You just can't play any of the Flash games because Flash doesn't exist anymore.
That's the best.
I know. Love
Bye.
Neopets. Bye.